Sorry.
Okay. Did we go ahead and get started? I don't see Phil here yet, though. Oh, there he is. Hi, Phil.
Hello, I'm here.
Awesome. And I saw there's a first slide. Thank you. So should we go do introductions, go around the room? See who's here. I can just start. I'm one of the co-leads. My name is Beth Byer. I'm the executive director of the Technology Alliance, and my co-lead with me is Phil Nicodemus, if you want to go. And we'll pass it from there.
Hello. Yes, Phil Nicodemus with Urban Rivers here. Thanks everyone for coming. Uh, Jeff, I see your name in front of my screen.
All right, I'm Jeff Mengler. I work for Hay and Associates. Do you want us to each maybe to pass it on to somebody? I'll call on Brian.
Very best.
Good morning, Brian Metzke from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. Ted is up first on my screen.
Morning, everybody. Ted Hafner, and I'm the coordinator for the Chicago Wilderness Alliance Green Vision Initiatives, and this is one of them. I will pass it to Laura Guteral.
Hi, everybody. Laura Guderian, not quite so new, Chicago Program Director for the Keller Science Action Center. Just listening in. I'm also on the steering committee for Chicago Wilderness Alliance, so very curious just to be part of the conversations. I will pass it on to Holly Hudson.
Good morning, everybody. Holly Hudson with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. Pass it on to Sarah Peterson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Peterson. I am the Coastal Engineering and Community Resilience Specialist with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. I will pass it to the other Laura.
Thank you. I'm Laura Riley. I'm the managing director of Chicago Wilderness Alliance, and I will pass it to Deanna.
Hi, I'm Dina Duholick. I work with the Conservation Foundation, and I work with the three watershed groups that we provide services to: the DuPage River Salt Creek Work Group, the Lower DuPage River Watershed Coalition, and the Lower Des Plaines Watershed Group.
How about Cheryl?
Oh, Cheryl Chapman, League of Women Voters, Natural Resources Committee from Indiana.
Nice.
Tessa, have you gone?
No, I'm not. Hi, everyone. I'm Tessa Murray. I'm with Friends of the Chicago River. I'm the Watershed Policy Manager leading our Greater Chicago Watershed Alliance, and I will pass it to Vidya.
Hey everyone, my name is Vidya Balasubramaniam. I am the Program Director for the Coastal States Organization, and I will pass it on to Shannon if you haven't gone yet.
Hi, y'all. I'm Shannon Byers. Sorry, I'm kind of driving right now, so I'm off video. I'm with American Rivers. I'm an economist. I'm based in Grand Rapids, but partner with many of you in Lake Michigan work. So happy to be here to listen today. Thank you.
Beautiful. That's everyone, right? I think so. If you haven't, speak now, or you will go unknown, unintroduced.
Greg Henshaw, Aquatic Invasive Species Outreach Specialist with Illinois Sea Grant and Illinois Natural History Survey.
Thanks, Greg.
Hi, Greg. Okay, we are now fully introduced. Yes, and so just kind of kicking off where we left off last time around. Beth and I kind of each have a couple of things that we've been sort of independently involved in. And I know some of you folks on the call also have been on the organization for trying to build any kind of movement around an Illinois riparian buffer bill. Beth's got some other stuff about in particular the AI data centers and things like that are becoming much more prominent in the region. Ted with American Rivers Update, but first I guess we'll go probably just right to Vidya unless anybody else has anything top of mind. But yeah, I'll let you take it from here, Vidya.
Thanks, Phil. I shared some information about this habitat restoration technical assistance opportunity at the Greater Chicago Watershed Alliance meeting. So this may be repeat information for some of you all. I know Tessa was there, Sarah was there. Anyone else was at that meeting, just so I can get a sense of how deep I should go today? Ted was there, Holly was there. Okay. So about 1/3 of you were at that meeting, so I might just present some of the same information and we can potentially build off of those conversations now that you've had a little bit more time to think about potential project ideas. But for those who weren't there, my name is Vidya Balasubramaniam. I am with the Coastal States Organization. We are a collective of coastal governments. So we represent all of the coastal zone management programs that are embedded within state agencies in the country. I particularly support the Great Lakes Coastal Zone Management programs. And so the context for this conversation today, I'll share a little bit more about our GLRI Habitat Restoration Technical Assistance Program. I have a couple of brainstorming prompts for us, and then we can talk about some potential next steps based on how our discussions go. And so, like I said, as the Coastal States Organization, we represent all of the coastal zone management programs. And so on behalf of the coastal zone management programs, we steward Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding that we get through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And what we're tasked with is stewarding funds to advance the habitats and species goals of GLRI Focus Area 4. And so over the past several years, every year, Coastal States Organization, in conjunction with our Great Lakes Coastal Zone Management programs, we pick about 4 projects and we work with the local partners to get those projects to a 60 to 80% engineering and design. Typically, these projects are all focused on habitat restoration, and then we pass those 80% designs off to the coastal zone management programs and their partners so that they can take it to apply for funding for final designs and full construction. So we provide that initial seed technical assistance to let these habitat restoration projects blossom and find daylight. For this group, the most relevant coastal zone management programs that we are very closely networked with are the Illinois Coastal Management Program, the Indiana Coastal Zone Management Program, and the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program. And so we work very closely with them as we try to identify projects to support. And that. Typically, the projects that we work on that are for engineering and design, they're according to GLRI, we need to identify a specific species that would benefit. And so these are some species that we have helped support in the past. Of course, we're not fully limited to this specific species list. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative acknowledges that each watershed and even each sub-watershed has really specific species needs. So depending on the site, we make sure that there is a specific species that would benefit. And we use that as a primary driver for the projects that we scope out. So we've been doing this work for the past 6 years almost. So in 2019, 2020, we did some workshops in every Great Lakes state to prioritize projects. Laura, yeah, we can share that species list as a follow-up, but again, don't hold me to it and don't hold anyone to it, because sometimes people get mad that their priority species is not on that list. But yes, we can share that list. Yeah, but we've been doing this work for a number of years, starting from 2020 through 2025. We've been able to support getting 16, actually, I believe the number is 18 as of today, 18 projects to an 80% design stage. And so now we're at 2025, and we're cautiously optimistic that the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative will continue to fund us through 2029. But in order for us to receive that funding, we have to provide them with an updated list of habitat restoration projects for each Great Lakes state. And in order to continue receiving funding to continue this program. And so that's why we're here, to get a sense of what projects you all have in mind that could use engineering and design support through 2029 and potentially 2030. So the types of projects we've done so far span the gamut. So we've done shoreline-specific projects, so beach, dune restoration, bluff, ravine work, hydrology reconnection, culvert restoration, wetland restoration, stream bank stabilization. So as long as there is a habitat and species focus, we're able to support a variety of different types of projects within the coastal watershed. And so, yeah, this is technically our project footprint. Doesn't necessarily have to be shoreline, as long as we can demonstrate hydrological connectivity to the Lake Michigan watershed. Projects tend to be eligible. And so just to give you a sense of projects we've done in the past, we recently wrapped up 80% design plans last year. We worked closely with the Audubon, Great Lakes, and the Wetlands Initiative to come up with this engineering and design plan for Marshalltown Marsh. So you can see they proposed some floodplain restoration, stream remeandering, and stream alignment, as well as some improved nursery habitat for several fish species, as well as marsh bird species. And then we just wrapped up some work with the Forest Preserve District of Cook County, where we looked at a little stretch along the lake, along the Little Calumet River, and came up with design plans for nature-based techniques for bank stabilization. So those are just 2 examples of projects we've done in the Illinois-Indiana watershed. We've done a couple more in Wisconsin, in like the Milwaukee area. Can show those examples too, if you're interested. But the types of projects that we're looking for that GLRI will let us work on. Because it's publicly funded, the sites need to be publicly owned or publicly accessible, hydrologically connected to the Great Lakes watershed, and should benefit a specific habitats and species. Typically, the landowner of the site should be willing for their site to be looked at, and they're able to fund all the data collection, but the landowners and the associated stakeholders should be willing to have site surveys on site to collect that data and do those site assessments. And our offering at no cost is we're able to provide that fiscal, logistical, project management, contract management support to get the site to 80% designs. And we'll typically do that in partnership with the coastal management program, as well as the local stakeholders and also community members if there is interest. So again, this is not a grant opportunity. This is a technical assistance opportunity. And so we're trying to line up projects for the next 3 to 4 years, and we're carefully constructing project lists for Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, the greater Chicago watershed. And so I want to spend the next couple of minutes trying to get a sense from you all. If you have any projects in mind that fit the criteria, who else should we get input from? And then we're also collecting regional data gaps to inform NOAA's future geospatial work. So if you have land use, land cover, bathymetric, any data needs that can support habitat restoration work, we're collecting that so that NOAA can put in funding requests from GLRI for the next couple of years. So maybe with that, I will stop there and see what questions you have, and also if you have any project ideas you want to share.
I have a question. Oh, someone else can go.
You go first.
All right. Thanks. One thing I was just wondering, since we had this conversation at the Watershed Alliance, I know a few people recommended getting in touch with Delta Institute, and then we also talked about that Indian Ridge Mars South project. That would be good to get the Park District on board for, since it's MWD owned land, but the Park District leases that site. So have you been able to get in touch with the Park District video?
Not yet. It is on my list though, Tessa, and I will include you in that conversation, but haven't yet followed up on some of your recommendations.
No worries, just curious.
My question had more to do with how would you like the data presented, or what are you looking for? What would you need data-wise to be able to put a project piece together like this?
Typically, for now, since we're just putting together project ideas, just the name of the site and, what are the goals for habitat restoration on that site. I think that's all that's needed for now, but in out years, as we start to work on projects, I'll reach out asking for a little bit more information.
Thank you.
Do you have, so I know this is for our region, do you have any priority locations? Is there going to be any sort of equity focus or any other kind, maybe, is it mostly habitat priorities? What's sort of the evaluation criteria weighting?
I think habitat would be the primary one. I'm not allowed to say that there is an equity focus, but I am interested in having an equity focus, so don't quote me on that. So typically we try to prioritize projects. Because this is a technical assistance opportunity, we look at partner capacities. So some partners, some municipalities, they have a lot of capacity, right, to apply for their own grant programs, to hire their own engineers. They have those resources. So if we have an abundance of projects, we try to prioritize partners who may not be able to do this on their own easily enough. Yeah, that would be. So I'm not allowed to say equity, but it is equity.
And so for the region that the CWA covers, obviously there's a lot of the stretch of, I think the overlap is pretty much slivers along the coast. Do you have a list of, or do you have a kind of more granular idea of where the boundary you consider is, along in particular, we're talking south, yeah, right there.
Honestly, no. I think
what's the
as long as
stance?
it's along this river that drains to Lake Michigan, you know, they're pretty willing to let us go further into the watershed. So there's no hard and fast boundary. It'll be on us to demonstrate that that site is connected enough to Lake Michigan that it merits technical assistance from
So
GLRB.
for the Chicago River, for example, we have increasingly growing data set that the lock system there is open so often that fish are moving pretty freely in and out of the system. So I guess that's kind of my foremost thought is, have you guys dealt with something like the Chicago River where the intention is not that it's hydrologically connected, even though it does back up and run into the lake occasionally, and then also it's just, they open it 70 or 80,000 times in a season. So, connected in a habitat sense where they're almost certainly fish coming in to spawn and going back out into the lake to kind of do their thing. So I'm wondering if you guys have, or even,
Yeah.
Calumet or anything else like that.
Oh yeah, Chicago River, Little Calumet definitely qualifies. Ted.
Thanks, video. I'm also wondering, I know I gave you some recommendations at the earlier meeting. Whether you followed up with them or not is fine. But one other recommendation came to mind, and that's the Village of Highland Park. And I don't know if you have contacted, I can't remember her name, but I can dig through my emails and see who their natural area specialists are, because they work with waterfront land quite a bit as well. Have you reached out to them yet or not?
Not yet, but I
Okay.
can reach out to them. That's a good
I
point.
will forward you their contact as well.
Yep. Thank you, Ted. And I did follow up with a few folks that you recommended as well. So yeah. And thanks for whoever recommended the North Slip, just north of Steelworkers Park. I think that one came up in the Greater Chicago Watershed Alliance meeting also. So would that just be the park district that we talked to about?
That would actually be the developer who's working on the site. They have at least shown us renderings in the past of like a cool kind of water-based access point there. And I think that I don't know if it's DNR, but there's public access, the kind of, I don't know if it's sanctioned or not, but there's a lot of people that fish there right now, and I think they have at least kind of partially opened it up for recreation already. So it would be some combination of the site developer and then whoever is already kind of managing that. I don't think it's Park District because it's a parcel that is specifically not already given to the Park District. So I can't remember who it is, but I can definitely look that up for you and get that to you.
Yeah, that sounds interesting and could be worth following up and learning more about. Thank you.
There's also another spot that I've always been interested in exploring whether something could be done about it, but there's the lagoon behind the Lincoln Park Zoo. And it's really got spots that are just completely falling apart. And I worry sometimes about some of that infrastructure there. So I don't know if that's even something that could be considered, but it's definitely coastal. So
Yeah, that's a good one. I know the city's initiative was looking at that site to provide technical assistance, but it may have fallen through. I can check about that, but I've added that to our list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ted?
Yes, Vidya, I forgot in terms of looking north about looking east, and Trail Creek Watershed near Michigan City has just finished a watershed plan, a 319 plan. Have you talked to them at all?
Yes, I just met
Awesome.
with them in person last week. Shannon,
Hooray!
and
Good.
got a tour near the kind of the bike trail area. There is a little piece of riverbank they want to restore. So had a very good conversation with them about that.
Yay, good.
Beth, I had a question for you when you mentioned the lagoon behind Lincoln Park Zoo. Which lagoon?
There is a lagoon, if you know where Diversity Harbor is, it's right like across from the Nature Museum. If you go like under the, there's, I guess it's Fullerton, and then you go further south there, literally stuff is like, it's dangerous to take people along the edges there. And there you can see it's all the woods are like broken apart across, like there's a, almost like a riparian, or there's a region that just kind of separates the lagoon and the lake. And that's kind of broken, the woods all broken apart. It looks like it could be a very doable project for someone to come like first and it would be interesting to see if, and I know a lot of people do use the zoo, and so I worry about school groups too that come out to the zoo and then go out to behind the zoo, and it's just not really safe along the lagoon there. So,
and is that Chicago Park District?
I believe I believe people probably here know more than yep. Okay. I believe so. Yeah, because we've got this mix. It's not too far away from where I live. We've got this mix of Chicago Park District and like the Nature Museum has like an area around the Nature Museum that's managed by the Nature Museum, but then like things like North Pond are managed by Chicago Park District, and then the South Pond is managed by the zoo. So there's all this like sharing of different kinds of things where things are intertwined together.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good site. Holly, let me know if y'all have a chance to look at that and if you also have thoughts on funding the lagoon project, because I know it's been on the list for a long time for people.
Oh, it's good to hear because I've been worried about that spot, but that's nice to hear it's on the list. Thank you.
I'll just say for that site, I used to work at Lincoln Park Zoo. I'm pretty sure that's Chicago Park District because even the land that the zoo is on is Chicago Park District land.
Yep.
They just lease it every year.
Yep, exactly. So there's all these different, finding different managers of who's like doing different parts. Because I know like around North Pond, there were different Chicago Park District people coming and planting trees and then working with nonprofits like Lincoln Park Conservancy to kind of coordinate the efforts. And then again, as you mentioned, like the Chicago Academy of Sciences is the one that hosted the work on the South Pond when they did that. So there's always this interconnection between the different players in Chicago. Thank you for that.
So I won't take up too much more of your time. I wanted to just plant the seed. I know many of you have already been providing some good suggestions, so keep thinking about this. I might, as a way to check back, I'll check back through the Greater Chicago Watershed Alliance meeting in November, just to give you all an update on the partners that I talked to and the project ideas that I received. Hopefully by then I can follow up with Chicago Park District and some of the other folks, including Shannon, who I've been meaning to chat with for a while, but Shannon had to hop off. So I'll report back. In the meantime, if you think of project ideas, you can email me. There's also a project solicitation form that's going around via the Illinois Coastal Management Program. They are collecting project ideas kind of as a one-stop shop. So I didn't want to send a separate form because it'll confuse people. So I'll send that Illinois Coastal Management Program project solicitation form that you can drop any ideas to, or you can email me, and we'll keep this conversation going. Thank you so much, and I'll pass this back to Phil or Ted or Beth.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. That's progress in a time where we need just about anything we can get. I wonder if it makes sense to jump over to Ted and the American Rivers update. I think maybe thematically that is closer, but also
Sure,
we
I
can
can
just
do
follow
that.
if you're not ready, Ted.
Yeah, no, I'm ready for that. We can jump back. So the American Rivers update, most of you or many of you have seen this map before, and unfortunately Shannon did have to jump off. That's too bad because she could also speak to this. But we've been working with them in the circles above the Chicago Wilderness Alliance geography to coordinate a more Lake Michigan-wide basin effort. Some of these early conversations have come into ideas of shared services and other um, uh, techniques like that, getting resources into the hands of DPW folks. But one of the best resources is this funding dashboard. I think we presented this quickly before, but it's a 7-step resource online. You don't need to start at step one. You can sort of bounce around, but each of these steps links to a suite of resources for funding and funding opportunities. That and items and elements that make up generally successful funding asks, right? Effective partnerships, how and where are technical assistance providers like Vidya? Um, how do you value multiple benefits, right? How do you select the right funding opportunity? These resources are all in here, and this is a really good guide. So after this meeting, you can find this online, but we will release this presentation, and you can select through these different steps and check out these different resources. I highly recommend getting partners to be aware of these resources, because I don't think we value them and use them enough. I know time is scarce and capacity is scarce, but also too right now funding is scarce. So to have a resource like this where it can sort of walk you through tips and tricks to a successful project and partnership. And then if you do meet many of these criteria, you can reach out to Shannon directly. I can put her email in the chat, but she's been a fantastic resource for us getting to know the rest of the basin-wide issues as well as the basin-wide players. So this is a burgeoning effort, and hopefully we can make this more of a team, water team deliverable for this group, because I think it's neat to be tapped into what's going on a lake-wide basis. Any questions with these resources or links? Nope. Excellent.
Looks
Phil,
great, Ted. Looks great.
Excellent. Phil, do you want to go with the riparian buffer, or Beth, did you want to lead with your AGL stuff?
Go with
Mine, I think will be pretty quick. So
Okay.
Beth, if you wanna, yeah. Or I was, oh, yeah. Well, yeah. So, one of the kind of two things that in Illinois were, I think everyone's kind of identified a need for, one of which being trying to get the state to kind of redefine what the public waters of Illinois are considered, or which right now is really only like 22 rivers, and there's kind of this whole um nobody downstate wants to kind of give up theoretically this access issue. Kind of near this concept, but a little more, I think, achievable is this riparian buffer legislation. Basically, people have been kind of rallied around the recent passage of a Minnesota riparian buffer legislation, which mostly has to do with the way that agricultural lands are planted and maintained, essentially just giving incentive to have a non-annual plant uh, be within, I think the buffer is even just something like 50 or 60 feet. Not terribly tough, but trying to think about how we do this in Illinois. I think, and I know Tessa's been on these calls as well, where we're trying to envision how we can develop something that would be doable throughout most of the state, but then also we have a lot of interstitial spaces where agriculture is quickly suburban and then quickly urbanized. So we're kind of also trying to envision how we do this. Right now we're kind of in the stages of going around and trying to explore other nearby, maybe Midwestern states that have tackled something like this or looked to tackle something like this in the past. We are obviously still in the stage of needing to kind of garner more support or any kind of support, a champion amongst a state legislature. The Minnesota people said that their governor was very much a champion of it, which helped the passage of their version, which is still not really that, restrictive or it's just a good start, I think, in a lot of ways. So, um, and also had an idea to perhaps start at a county level. Some county like Lake County in Illinois here might be a good place to um try to start some version of this on a smaller scale that maybe could then be built out statewide, and Lake County might be the best spot for it in terms of people who are perhaps eager to do something like this on top of a good mixture of agricultural land that, like a lot of the state, will quickly transition into suburban and then urban spaces. So yeah, just a quick updates on that. And I think everyone's pretty much in the data gathering, information gathering, relationship building phase of this. So if anyone is interested in helping us tackle this or kind of move forward or build a better base of knowledge, if we maybe have places that we think might also like to try something out like this, like I know my first thought was McHenry County if you wanted a little more challenge than Lake County. um but yeah, that's kind of just where we're at. And if anybody wants to join in, I know Ted and Tessa, you guys have been on these meetings as well, so I don't know if you guys have any other tidbits to add or things you've been thinking of.
I guess I could add something to that, Phil. I mean, when you mentioned McHenry County, that had come to mind because they're starting this county-wide, watershed planning effort and starting in the Kishwaukee watershed, which is largely agricultural. So I think working with McHenry County and Scott Kuykendall, certainly worth that conversation.
Oh, that's great. Do you happen to know who's kind of leading the watershed development effort?
Scott Kuykendall. So I can
Okay.
look up his email for you here.
That would be great.
So I can
Yeah,
spell it right, right? The other thing Kane could also be a possibility. I actually sit on the Farmland Protection Commission in Kane County. I don't know, and personally do a lot of watershed-based planning in Kane County. We'll be starting to update the Tyler Creek watershed-based plan. Well, it's a mix of suburban and ag, and like you say, that those agricultural areas now becoming house, subdivisions. So possibly some synergies there.
Phil, to your point, there are also synergies with the CWA Group 4, which is our protection group. They're looking at this as well. So this conversation is happening in multiple of these meetings across the goal groups. So just for all of you to be aware of that as well.
I'm wondering, how available are these watershed plans? Do they have open access, or is it more by municipality? How would one get access to stuff like that?
Most of them are published on the watershed group's websites.
Okay, thank you.
Most of them have a very public process through their development. It's part of the 319 process is to be developed very openly with a large group of stakeholders. So most of them have a website or something following their development, and we can probably find links to some of them if you were to Google those watersheds and find them.
Also, if they've been adopted, and Illinois EPA has approved them, they are on Illinois EPA's watershed management planning website. At least the ones, some of the older ones don't have, links, but certainly the more, last decade are there.
Yep. And then when you get to the legislation writing side of things, I wrote the buffer rules for North Carolina and the new Tarpam, Cape Fear, and Catawba rules.
Okay.
Wow, that's awesome.
So
yeah, I mean,
when I worked for the state, when I worked for DNR. So
You work for DNR.
I was on the
Okay.
committee and wrote and helped draft those rules.
It's funny, I think I was looking it up and I think like besides Minnesota, North Carolina is the only one that has this like publicly done, and you know, it's very interesting too. I think that
Yeah, we
the
did it
just
back in the
sheer
early
difference.
2000s
Yeah, with
in
quite
North
a lot of
Carolina.
differences between the strategies too, which I
Yeah.
think just kind of belays the need to get a lot of people in the room. So yeah, definitely, if you don't mind, I'll reach back out to you if you
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
afterwards. Yeah.
we took very different strategies and how we wrote the rules for each of those different basins. The rules are slightly different in each of the basins, and how we got to them were very different outreach policies for each of those basins. But I was on the team that did all the basin rules.
Could you unpack that a little bit? How are they different in terms of your experience?
Well, the rules are not the same for each of the basins. They were driven by different things. So the noose rules started the North Carolina thing when we had the Listeria outbreaks in the estuaries, and we had the large scale fish kills, if you remember that far back in the early 2000s. So the noose is a huge package of rules that include nutrient rules for the wastewater treatment plants. We also did a lot of ag rules. It's a package of rules. And so the buffer rules sit in that. And that's a very urban, it starts with a very urban basin, goes to a coastal basin, had a very visible problem that needed to be solved, and had a lot of public support at a large scale behind it, and a lot of people working on it. Then we got to the Catawba, which was a mountain basin. Very different people, very different ways of getting that rule through. When you're working with a basin that starts up in, say, Marion, up in the mountains, and then goes through and ends up in Charlotte, actually, but we used a big open stakeholder process for that, bringing people together to write those rules. Those rules are a lot less restrictive than the noose rules because somewhat of a different basin and slightly different watershed, but also because of the people we were working with. Working with a very rural, heavily rural watershed was a very different atmosphere than working with what we were dealing with in the eastern part of the state. And we did not have such a public process with the invisible process that we did with those rules. And the tar PAM and the Cape Fear rules are somewhat similar to the noose rules because they had less severe Listeria rules, but those are larger package rules. The Catawba rule really just stands alone as a buffer rule.
And is there one website that has all three of those, or can you send a link or put some links in the chat and we can kind of follow?
Yeah, I mean, I could see what's going on with the buffer, still what's going on down there. There's been a lot of changes there, so I'm assuming the rules are still in place.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting, figuring out best practices. I see Tessa's hands up. Tessa?
Yeah, I'm curious about the North Carolina example because we haven't really delved into that yet. And you mentioned the one ends up in Charlotte. So just like high level, how does the North Carolina rules, how do those play out in an urban landscape like Phil mentioned? That's something that we've been
So
thinking
the
about.
noose rule is a 55-foot riparian buffer, 30-foot untouched, 20-foot turf. And that is in all areas. So like the noose starts in Raleigh. So I mean, even in an urban area, and that's on all perennial and intermittent streams. So it's a pretty strict rule. It's a 50-foot, and so it's 30-foot undeveloped, so natural buffer. So whatever is there is what you are. And then you can have 20-foot turf. And then there's like temporary structures may or may not be allowed in that 20-foot turf, depending on what you had there, what is there. I mean, I think there's some like swing sets are allowed, but not sheds, things like that. And that's on all perennial and intermittent streams. The Catawba rules, I think we ended up settling more for that 30-foot wide buffer because that was all we could negotiate with the stakeholders in that group. And so there's a slightly different buffer in that rural watershed. But then here's a website. I'm trying to pull up that's a flyer. I don't know what that is. That's a very odd thing. But they're adopted rules in the states. But then like the noose rules is part of a series of packages that we called like the noose rules that were all like situated as part of that. So that's how they are. And so some of them are state jurisdictions, some have local jurisdiction, but at the time there was a lot of other stuff going on in the state that was pushing the background of these. North Carolina has a very large scale watershed planning effort being done by the state, where the state does a lot of planning and a lot of development based on their, Holly knows a little bit of this because that's how I met Holly, was when I moved here. I was a planner for the state. with their 14 large scale watersheds, and they do a lot of planning and a lot of management on these big large scale watersheds, and that's how they tackled these roles. And they had a lot of development, a lot of coordination going on within this. There's been a lot of administration changes in the state, so you can imagine politically the funding that was coming and going within the state.
Yeah, great. It sounds like we really ought to have you in the room for the next conversation. So if you're
Yeah.
available, I think we'll add you onto that
Yeah, like
list.
here's a
And
link
again,
to the actual like rules for the news. Trying to see if there's a good paid web. I'll have to look. I can look and see if I can find a good website.
yeah, I think I was reading it's pretty available on Google, I think. So,
Yeah.
there are a lot of documents and
Yep.
studies and things like that. So, yes, and again, anybody else that's interested in kind of joining in and sort of doing whatever, it's still this amorphous thing. So it's just if it's got any momentum, it's gonna require us just kind of pushing it a little bit here and there as much as we can. But yeah, just let me know. And Beth, I want to make sure you have plenty of time to talk about all your stuff. So unless anybody else has any kind of burning points or questions about this, I think I'll hand it over to Beth.
Okay. I wonder if I could share screen because there's a fact sheet that I can just kind of go through here.
Yeah, you can share screen.
Can I share? Okay. Okay, great. I'm gonna just do that then. Okay. I thought this was really important. I actually attended a deep dive with the Alliance for the Great Lakes. I'm one of their Alliance ambassadors, done a lot of Adopt a Beach and other kinds of activities over the years. But I think the biggest takeaway right now for us is just that there is no accountability. There's no information that's required from these data centers. And you can kind of see a little bit about the data centers that are going up. They are using a lot of water. They are populating there. A lot of places want them, but there's no way to track, or there's no laws on the books to track how much water is being used and how it's being set up. So we talked a little bit about the possibility of setting up data centers near where wastewater is being treated, because that seems to be the most revolutionary work that's being done, is kind of doing these kinds of things. So there's some of the other main issues, and really don't need to talk a lot about this, but I just wanted us we care a lot about our water, and to just kind of not have any kind of tracking. I don't know if any of you are familiar with any tracking that is starting to go in locally. And then there's also the groundwater mapping, because there's a lot of wells that are actually, some cities on the west side are only well-based. And so I found that out at the state fair when I went down this year. It was very interesting. But so in terms of some of the groundwater that's happening and being used, I don't know if anybody has any insights they want to share about what they know about what's going on with tracking at all of water use by data centers or other organizations that are doing this kind of work. And if it's new to us, that's totally fine. They just wrote a report and then I put the report in the chat. So just thought it's important for us to kind of have it on our radar to sort of think about like what does this mean to all the work that we're doing with our work on the water and the rivers and the lakes.
Yeah, Beth, I think, there's other folks at CMAP who are involved in our kind of groundwater and water supply work, and I'll ask.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone familiar with any groundwater management laws that are starting to go into place, or any other kinds of municipality tracking of water use? Okay. Cool. So that was just, like I said, it was more just like, I think it's not not only not on our radar in Illinois, but the call I was on, people represented all of the 5 Great Lakes, and it wasn't really on most people's radar. So just kind of put it out there and start thinking about it a little bit. Thank you.
It's interesting to have that because the same concern is happening right now with the energy usage of those same data centers, right? And of course, we all, I think, have been able to avail of not needing to go to graphics departments and things to kind of make a, AI version of stuff. But it's interesting that this is happening. So much of this initial point of developing AI is just consuming disproportionately so many resources kind of across the spectrum. And this appears another one of those things where legislatures are slow to kind of get their arms around something that I think is going to be such a big deal. But like AI isn't going to be profitable for, they're already talking about this as like a decade long thing where they're just going to have to keep training it before it actually becomes economically useful for anybody. um so there's a bunch of these things that are going to go up, and I don't know if there's a plan for what happens, in the longer term. It just seems like a lot of speculative building. And so I think protecting the natural resources that they're going to use, and each of our respective agencies and organizations are just going to be at this point where we're going to get a bag of money or something shoved in our face to kind of say, here, fix the problem that we're creating, and always a weird moral conundrum of how to kind of dance around it. 10. I'm just rambling now.
Thanks, Phil, and thank you, Beth, for bringing that to my attention and our attention. One thing I'm curious about is looking through the report, because you gave it to me early, right? They also look at agriculture, which is not so surprising, but also mining. And I'm wondering where the priority falls between the data centers, the mining, and the agriculture.
Yeah.
They talked about that at all in the deep dive.
They didn't talk as much about that as they talked about the methods, such as evaporative cooling or closed circulation systems, or like these are some of the things that like right now we promise to build data centers, but they're not built yet. So maybe just getting into like how the weeds a little bit, like how are they being set up? Like I said, the wastewater being near like one of these centers could use the same water. Yeah, there's a primarily person you'll see, and again, the PDF is in the chat if you guys want to take a look at the deeper dive into this. And then there's electricity use. So like if you're using electricity, how are you generating that electricity? So so to your point, Ted, yeah, it's not clear which is taking priority in terms of those three.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in League, we're mostly advocating for things. And I live near Michigan City, and some of us went to the city council meetings about the data center, which does actually pretty much border on Trail Creek, but apparently they're going to use water from Lake Michigan. Since the new data center was approved and is being built right within the city limits, which we kind of all opposed, but is what it is. So I guess once they start running and everything, we're anticipating that we won't like what they're doing in terms of decibels and generator emissions and things like that. So, but one thing we could do would be to ask our water department to track water usage, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is a problem throughout the state of Indiana. I mean, the data centers are trying to set up everywhere they possibly can. So, are there other good questions to ask data centers in relation to water usage?
The methods, again, whether they have a closed circulation system, whether
Yeah,
they
ours is going to be closed.
and then when that water, how long will they use that water for? And can it be like commingled with something else? So it's not just, like the wastewater. These are some of the ways that they're starting to, and again, I want to say, this is what I recall from the call, that the one country that's doing it is Korea. as they're doing best practices where they're doing more with the wastewater and and their plans like that. So we've got to look globally, I think, at this point to try to find best practices for how to build these data centers.
Right. We had, do you know Deborah Shore?
I do.
Yeah.
She's
She
awesome.
testified at one of the meetings, and she was like, well,
Yeah.
if you're going to pass this thing, you should at least use the most cutting edge technologies so that, well, if we've got to have it here, which we don't want it, but if we have to have it, it should be just the best data center in the world in terms of cutting edge technology. But now I'm afraid that citizens are actually going to have to push for that because the city council seems like they're hands off at the moment. So,
Yeah, and educating ourselves, because it's
Right.
not like it's common knowledge right now to kind of know.
We educate a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you
Jake?
very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I see Jake has a hand up. Yeah.
Hey everybody, Jake Fincher, Executive Director of Southeastern Wisconsin Watersheds Trust. I joined very late, but something that we don't cover at our organization in the Milwaukee area is groundwater, and there seems to be a need to educate more about it in our region as well. We have data centers popping up all over the place, pretty common place in southeastern Wisconsin now, it seems like. One thing that recently happened, we had one of our river keepers, an advocacy organization, go after Microsoft to disclose information that they weren't disclosing. So if interested, Microsoft, Milwaukee River Keeper, you can see some updates on that. And then additionally, there is an organization called the American Groundwater Trust, link in the chat. They host conferences nationally and have not had one in the Great Lakes area either ever or recently. And they hope to do one in Milwaukee in 2026. They're looking for content and they're looking for field trips. It does not need to be southeastern Wisconsin specific. In fact, they're looking for Great Lakes regional groundwater topics, issues, and presenters. So by happenstance, our organization is going to be the organizational liaison for the Milwaukee area. But I would love to funnel content, presenters, topics, issues to the event organizers. So if you don't have my information, maybe you could forward it to Ted. I'm going to volunteer you. Sorry, Ted. If you could put anything that you want to hear covered at a panel or a presentation, I can forward it along.
Yeah, I do have some stuff that I saw this summer at the state fair that I think might be relevant to what I'll pass it on to both of you guys. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. We are at 3 minutes. So
Any announcements?
I'll keep talking very briefly. February 10th, we have our Clean Rivers, Clean Lake Conference in Milwaukee. Stormwater focused, particularly engineering departments, municipal government, MS4, and green infrastructure content. So February 10th, Discovery World in Milwaukee. And we have a call for proposals open now.
okay, so I guess if there's no further, yeah. What are you thinking, Phil?
I was going to say the same thing, Beth. Same page right there. Yeah. So everyone stay in touch. Ted and Laura, thank you so much as always for getting everything organized and giving us something to look at. And I very much appreciate it. This was really interesting. I think we've got a couple of things to go explore as we head into this fall season. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
And do we
and then
have the
yes,
date of our next meeting? I don't know if that's on the calendar.
I don't know if we have it set yet,
If we
but
haven't,
we'll figure it out.
we'll be in touch. And if people are interested, there is a possibility of setting up like a LinkedIn group where we could post some of this, if that's something you're at all interested in, if you want to raise a hand, because that's something like we talk about these at meetings, but I'm happy to help organize some of that into some data places, where we can find it again. Or if we just want to have conversations, that's okay too. It's good.
So we did, just to follow up, we do have a LinkedIn group that we can do that, but we haven't gotten approval to kind of get that to go live at the steering committee level.
Okay.
in the meantime, I think we should probably, I don't know, Ted, what you feel the best. We were using running minutes, but are we transitioning to Session Lab where we store links or follow-up notes? I think that we should make a decision as a committee and a team. Maybe Beth, Phil, Ted, and I can. I think we just need to standardize this across the GVI teams because there has been a lot of technological changes. So we can continue to discuss that.
And then our next meeting is November 18th.
If we're gonna, meet bi-monthly.
Yeah. But if we're gonna meet quarterly, we probably won't meet till the new year.
Do we want to take a vote on that really fast? Do people want to try to, I would do the 18th just to get together one more time. How do people feel generally? Is that something you're interested or no?
I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about you, Phil? Does that work for your schedule?
Yep. Sure does.
Great.
Thumbs
Thanks,
up.
everybody.
Ready.
Good one, guys.